the salute to the flag and ask the Boy Scouts that are here tonight to lead us in the pledge tonight. Fellas?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Quick heads up, there may be a loose chipmunk somewhere around, so be prepared. We have the right people to be prepared. The notice of appearance of the New Jersey Public Meetings have been satisfied by forwarding a news release to the Asbury Park Press on December 12, 2013, stating that a regular meeting of the Cold Spring Township Committee would be held on October 8, 2014, Town Hall, 7:30 p.m. Notice of appearance has been posted on the Township Bulletin Board. Copy is on file in the office of the Township Clerk.
Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Shatzel.
Here.
Mayor Engel.
Here.
Mayor Orgo.
Here.
Mayor Fitzgerald.
Here.
Mayor McNabb.
Here. First item on the agenda this evening is the approval of the meeting minutes from September 23rd, 2014. Any comments from the committee?
That's one comment, Mayor. Actually, two comments. On number 4, we swore in Mike Burke as the emergency management coordinator. Could we just make sure that we send either a copy of the minutes or something to Mike Beauregard for being here? I appreciate him being here. He came from the county. That was a nice gesture on his part. And then under paragraph 6 on page 2, in that sentence, I think it says, Mr. Bowden commented, Ms. Vaxarian has worked in the township court, I think it should say for approximately 2 years. Only comments. I'm not sure if that's right.
Can I get a motion on this, please?
So moved.
Second.
As amended.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Shatzel.
Yes.
Mayor Engel.
Yes.
Mayor Orgo.
Yes.
Mayor Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Mayor McNabb.
Yes. Your troop leader's coming, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going to skip ahead to number 3. Let's do a presentation. Might as well keep moving. She's coming.
Guys, you sure? She's coming.
You sure she's coming?
There she is.
We're texting her right now.
There she is. Oh, perfect. All right.
Just in time.
All right, so you're just in time because we're gonna take a minute to welcome Cold Snake Boy Scout Troop 290 and their new troop leader, Ms. Anu Alawalia. I hope I pronounced it correctly. And welcome. Thanks for coming out tonight. Maybe you could just tell us a couple of the things that the troop has going on. What would you plan for this upcoming season?
I just want to clarify, I'm not the troop leader.
Okay.
I am the communication merit badge counselor. So the troop.
What promoted you to
And one of the requirements of the communications merit badge is to attend a public meeting, a township meeting, and that's why I contacted Mr. Robert Bowden. So you might have a few more people coming in who wants to do communication merit badge. So they're going to observe how the meeting is done, what you discuss, and they're going to be like journalism. They're going to take down notes and tell me what they learned from the meeting today. The troop does a lot of interesting things in general. We have over 30 scouts, and they go through the Boy Scouts of America, the program for that. And each one of them are aspiring Eagle Scouts, and communication merit badge is one of the Eagle merit badges.
So gentlemen, at the end of the evening, we have a public comment section. If you have questions about anything that goes on, that's the time to ask the questions. Don't be shy, because nobody else is. Well, thank you again for coming, and again, if you have any questions during the public comment section, or even after the meeting offline, feel free to ask.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to the presentation. We have representatives here from Verizon, Mr. John Zaliga, and from Cablevision, Mr. Don Dupree. And who's going to go first?
John goes to first. Flip the coin who lost.
Have some handouts. Good evening, Mayor and members of the committee, township officials.
officials, and Colts Neck residents. My name is John Zaliga. I'm External Affairs Field Director for Verizon for the 7 central counties in the state, one of which is mine. I'm here this evening at the invitation of Commissioner Orgo and Administrator Valerie. The administrator contacted me stating that JCP&L was in town trimming trees and inquired regarding Verizon's vegetative management policy. Subsequently, I, along with Bill Roth, Verizon State Manager for Operations, Jeff Pearson, Area Supervisor for Construction, and the Cablevision representative, conducted a ride-along with Administrator Ballard on September 22nd to survey Committee Orgo's concerns and respond while we were in the field. Committee Orgo was called away at the last minute and could not attend. I, along with Area Construction Manager Mike Shivers and Area Construction Supervisor Jamie LaMarche, conducted a second ride-along survey with Committee Orgo, accompanying us yesterday, October 7th, to make sure we were understanding his concerns and responding to him directly while in the field as to Verizon's position. Verizon takes its mandate very seriously, and this is a quote, to maintain its property within the township and shall comply with applicable law for provision of safe, adequate, and proper service at just and reasonable rates, and safeguards the public interest in continuous and uninterrupted service within the township. This is Section 12 from the franchise agreement, Philadelphia franchise agreement passed and accepted by this board on second reading April 10, 2013. Verizon's property in Colts Neck consists of telephone poles, copper and fiber lines, and other equipment. Verizon does not own any trees in the township of Colts Neck. We are a regulated company. We are under the auspices of the New Jersey Bureau of Public Utilities. In May of 2013, we submitted exactly what I've handed out to you. Verizon New Jersey tree trimming procedures. Generally, tree trimming is performed by local government personnel and by electric companies, since down power lines are more likely to create a hazard to the public than are Verizon's cables. However, when necessary, Verizon will assist tree removal crews with relieving tensions on cables and poles caused by falling trees and limbs. Verizon will also trim back branches, limbs, and other vegetation as needed to protect the safety of our employees when placing new cable and fiber facilities to otherwise safeguard our plant. Verizon diligently responds to calls regarding cables lying on the ground which pose a safety hazard and to prevent safe removal of fallen trees or branches. Within Verizon, tree trimming maintenance type requests are the responsibility of the construction organization, which is the organization I brought to Colts Neck on the 2 ride-alongs, who determine the appropriate action based on the individual review. You cannot walk up to an electric line that's in service. It's dangerous. You risk being electrocuted and killed. First Energy states in its vegetative management brochure, which you can access online, when a tree contacts a power line, the tree becomes an alternative path for electricity and creates a short circuit. When a tree or branch contacts a Verizon cable, in most cases there is no effect on the service provider. You can go up and touch a Verizon line at any time, and there is no effect on the tree. If a tree or large branch falls on an electric line, in most cases it goes right through and breaks the line. When a tree or large branch falls on a telephony line, in most cases it either has no effect or can be held up by the cable. Because these copper lines resemble cables used in the suspension bridge, where the suspension bridge cables consist of hundreds of smaller cables that are encased. Verizon cables in Colts Neck can be up to 1,800 pairs or 3,600 individual copper cables that are encased. These cables are strong, as is the suspension bridge, and can support a substantial amount of weight. In instances where the line cannot support the falling tree, the cable will usually fall to the ground and still be in service with no service interruption. We do not own the trees in the right-of-way. We do not own the land in the right-of-way. Otherwise, you'd be charging us for property tax on it. The owner of the tree
That's a good idea.
the owner, we don't own it. The owner of the tree is responsible for the tree. If they would like to have a tree they own, trimmed or manicured, they are advised to engage a qualified, and I emphasize qualified, tree company to conduct the work. In conclusion, there is no cost benefit. It makes no business sense, either for the company or for the consumer, for us to spend the many millions of dollars it would require to manicure vegetation we do not own when it has no deleterious effect on our functioning network. Thank you, and Don, if you'd like to.
Don Vickery, Director of Government Affairs for Cape Convention and Representative for the Township of Cold Snack. I agree wholeheartedly with my colleague from Verizon. We also were invited by Mr. Bowden and Councilman Orgo to come out and see exactly what the township was concerned about. And in the drive-through, we received 4 or 5 addresses that we thought warranted attention. And we took care of that within the next 2 days following that visit. And we would like, anytime that a line is in contention or anyone thinks that a line is in contention or has something to do with us, just advise us of the address. We will look at it. If it does have a problem, we will take care of it. If it doesn't have a problem, we will advise the township concerning it. But our policy is exactly as Verizon indicated. We do not cut or trim trees anywhere in the state. If the tree limbs are fair or plant or wires, we will take a careful look at it and take the according action in order to protect our cable and also in order to protect the safety of our workers.
Mayor, I'd like to add on, we have the same position, and that has been my relationship with Administrator Bowden and the staff. If he calls me on a concern, I ask him to send me an address, and we send people out to take a look at it. And in addition to that, while we were out with Committeeman Orgo yesterday, Jamie LaMarche, one of our supervisors, when Committeeman Orgo identified a lower hanging cable down the street here, and I don't remember the name of the street, that may have been affecting mowing, I believe you categorized it. While we were on the drive, we called up and had somebody come out and take, they said they took care of it. They didn't?
Now, when we left yesterday, it still wasn't taken care of.
No, I know, he was on his way. When you left us yesterday, we drove down and took a look at it. It hadn't been corrected, but he was on his way to correct it. It's dark, I can't see today, but we'll follow up on that meeting in order.
Gentlemen, have any questions?
I have a question, Mayor, if you don't mind. John and Don, I've never fully understand the whole deal. There's some are JCP&L poles, some are Verizon. Are there any other cable visions? No? So you're going to stay seated right now. Is there a plan to either accelerate the replacement of poles that we have in town, some of which have been 40 and 50 years old? We jumped off this bridge during Sandy, as you know. But when I travel around the country, I noticed that no one else seems to have the problems that we have because they've all gone to metal poles for the most part, especially in the southeast.
I don't know of any metal poles in our inventory or that we're using at this time, but to answer that, the poles are inspected periodically. Since I've been in this position, as a matter of fact, I was contacted by Colsnick, I don't know how many, a few years ago, and if you walk up to, Mayor and Committee, if you walk up to a pole, you will see metal tags on there that say Boston. That is the pole inspection company that comes out and looks at every pole. And you'll see a number of tags. Those tags will have a date on them. And what they'll do is they'll make sure that that pole is in good enough shape to handle what's needed to handle. And that includes sometimes when JCP&L will put additional cans and transformers on the top of our poles, and they need to be replaced because the pole is a smaller size pole. They will come in and they will put a larger pole that can accommodate the equipment that they've placed on that. And yes, there are JC poles within Colsnick, and there are also BT poles, which is Bell Telephone, one of our legacy companies.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
Appreciate your presentation. I understand your presentation. One of the things that I find from a business perspective, obviously there's functionality and then there's aesthetics. So one of our responsibilities on the committee is to make sure that the town looks as well maintained as it can be. So the struggle that I have from an aesthetic point of view is when JCP now, for functionality, does their work and takes down some limbs that need to be taken down. Now we have a tree that's completely misshapen. So the frustration that I have had all these years is that I'll watch this certified, experienced crew come down and stop, because that's where they stop, and they're right there. So do you know at your level, if at any point at a higher management level for the three companies, that if there's ever been discussions about doing some shared services because they're right there?
I think that's really a conversation for JCP&L. As I stated during my presentation, it's really not, the vegetation doesn't have a deleterious effect on our plants.
Understood.
Basically, JCP&L is just doing just enough.
Right.
And I don't disagree with you. Committeeman Orgo was very concerned yesterday about aesthetics, and I fully understand your point. But I think that's a conversation for JCP&L, because they do have to trim trees, and they do trim them to the degree that you're mentioning.
Yes.
Other than that, and I mean, the money that is, the outlay that it's going to cost can be, the township can do it as well. I mean, I can't see you, well, I mean, if it's that big of a concern, you know, you're also to engage a qualified tree company.
Of course. On the other side, I can't just go out and hire somebody to clean up the lines that are left behind. And we've spent hours and money on giving you reports, and I do appreciate the responsiveness from both places. We play the game of, is it FiOS, is it cable, is it telephone? So that takes even additional time administratively for us to do that. So what I would ask is that if there might be a program in place already, or if not, as work is being done, if there's a chance for the crew not to make it to the point where both of our jobs are more difficult. So now I have to see something, I have to write it up, I have to get it to the administrator calls you, when, if we can loop all the way back, the person that's doing that job, for whatever reason that they have to leave the lines behind, coil the lines, all of that, to not do it.
Well, now we're discussing two separate things here. We're talking about vegetative management, and we're also talking about plant maintenance.
Okay.
And I think what you're talking about is plant maintenance right now, and yes, many times I'm called on something and it turns out to be cable. Many times cable is called on something and it turns out to be telephony. Our techs are supposed to leave it in a tidy condition. So that's what they're tasked to do. So you're absolutely correct. When you talk about the coils, coils that are aerial, those are fiber, and they should be neat. I mean, those are the FiOS plant, which quite frankly every town in the state calls me up and says, when are you going to finish the
I remember that's the same question.
Yeah.
You know, I've asked it a number of times.
Yes, and they do those five. So you have many towns want, but those some of the loops which should be properly coiled, I'll put it that way, are fiber loops that are replacement fiber, and they're also built for the future in case another home comes in the area or something like that.
So we'll continue to give you a call, both locations. There's a lot of what I consider unfinished. I think I can distinguish between a tidy job and one that just looked like maybe there's future and it got changed. I'm sure there's, it's a huge business that you have. I'm sure there's change orders and this and that, and people get pulled for different reasons, and I understand storms are a different situation, but we want to, as best we can, keep the aesthetics the best that we can.
And I concur with you, and I believe with Beth and Administrator Bowden, we've tried to be responsive. Anytime they've contacted us, we've tried to be responsive. And we'll continue to be responsive.
And I appreciate that. Even having you both here tonight is I appreciate it.
No, we spent a couple hours together yesterday riding around. The problem is when Jersey Central cuts down and they leave a stump, just below their 10 foot, below their electric wires, there it's sitting. And it's got maybe one branch going through the horizon. Instead of dropping the whole tree to the ground and taking it off, it's just, everybody just wants to push the circle.
All right, we'll have some additional discussion, I think. Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
From a reactive perspective, I just want to commend both of you. We dealt a lot during Hurricane Sandy, and I think that you were both very forthright and receptive and speedy with your responses to getting Colts-Neck up and running from an educated perspective. What I'm most concerned, however, at this point in time, is being proactive. And I can tell you that working with Jerry Riccardi from JCP&L has been an absolute pleasure. And I do understand why you can't trim below from a business perspective. It's purely economic. It's expensive to cut these trees. And I'll tell you something, they did a phenomenal job, not just tree cutting, but actually removing trees. So I guess what I have is a question, more so than a comment. And that is, can the people of Colts-Neck in this committee be confident that the poles, meaning those poles owned by Bell Atlantic, some of those poles that have on their tags, which I'm very familiar with, SC for Scobeyville or AT for Atlantic Township, which haven't been Atlantic Township or Scobeyville for well over 50 years. Are you confident, and can you tell this board that you're confident, and the people of Colts-Neck, that those poles will not fall to the weight of what's on them currently, as well as some of the vegetation pulling down those wires?
As I said previously, Osmos is the company that we engage to inspect the pole and assure that that pole is in good shape to handle the load it's expected to hold. As to vegetation, and if you're talking about vines and things like that, again, we are, our network and our lines are pretty substantial. I mean, when you're talking at a 300 pair, when you're talking at 180 pair, you double that. So it's 360 copper lines going through it, Committeeman.
I understand. With all due respect, I wasn't looking for an open-ended question. It's really just closed-ended.
We do engage Osmos to inspect those lines and those poles. They do inspect them on a periodic basis, and we expect them to do their job and do it well.
So the answer is yes?
The answer is yes.
Okay, and just so the expectation of the township is that Verizon, just as we expect from JCP&L, that they'll be diligent in replacing those poles that need to be replaced.
Exactly.
That's what we expect from, as part of our working relationship, and it's not an unreasonable expectation.
Agreed.
The problem is with these poles, as I see it, these poles were made for first electric lines, and then it was small telephone. Now we got telephone cables that are this big, there's 2 or 3 of them hanging on. Now we have cable vision. I don't think when a tree comes over, because that's what pushed them over the last time, it's just the weight from all the wires, and the wires are at, straight up and down, that pole's got no problem. When it starts going like this, that's why you see a lot of them leaning towards the street too.
There's, I could speculate on many different things. I mean, that's why I thought it was important that we took you on a ride with the people that actually do it to address your concerns. While we were exactly where your concern was, but there's a number of different things that can come into play. JCP&L can put additional transformers on the top. If they do that and it's a BT pole, and they recognize the size of the pole is inadequate to support the transformers, it is incumbent upon them to replace the pole with a larger pole that can accommodate the equipment that they placed on it. And I know our people made you aware of that, Committeeman. But there's a lot of different things that can play in this. That question full.
We also had a BT pole that was tied to a tree, but they say that Jersey Central's problem.
We had a BT pole that had a can on the top that had a guy wire that was from the JC position. So JC put it on there, that they tied it to across the street, around a tree. I don't remember the street, and I know
Laird Road.
Laird Road, Committeeman. And I know that the Verizon representatives who were there with you yesterday said they will escalate it to their counterparts in JC as well.
Right. And I gave it to Bob yesterday, he called, I don't know what they
It
did.
has been called. I don't know.
But they got to put a pole across the street in order to do it, because it's on such an angle, and they put a new pole up, but it's killing the tree. And this tree is straight around.
That was the
They got a
solution.
cable coming right through it.
That was the solution that was suggested by Verizon employees yesterday.
So it was a BC pole, but it was a
BT
Jersey,
pole.
BT pole, but it was a Jersey Central problem.
Yeah, we share the poles, as you know. I mean, we have ownership of certain poles, but we have to share the poles.
Your customers enjoy your hotspots that have been installed in the township, and if you continue to do that, that would be wonderful, especially at the parks, would be great. Anything that you know, I know that's a process, and I've had the pleasure of speaking to you about that, so if it's ever discussed again for that area, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
your time, as always.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, moving right along. Ready? Number 4 this evening, ordinance 2014-18. This is an ordinance amending and revising chapter 137, hotels and motels of the code of the township of Colts Neck. This is the first reading by title. This ordinance amends an existing ordinance imposing certain requirements on our hotels in town as far as registering guests and recording certain information. And these changes are being made at the request of the police department and the code enforcement officer, so as to better manage who's staying at our hotels and to make sure they're complying with existing ordinances related to their stays. Any comments from the committee on this?
Just one, actually, I had something for Senator Bennett, and I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly, especially for violations and penalties.
Go ahead.
Okay, you guys can probably answer, I'm sure. So, the violation can be given to whom?
John, this is a question for you on the ordinance 18,
Yes.
the registry of Mr. Shad's.
So, under C on page 1 on our page here, violations and penalties, any person who commits a violation of this chapter, etc. So that any person is, we're just specifically speaking of the owner of the hotel, correct?
That's to whom the enforcement would be effective.
Who's got the violations?
It's the
It
hotel.
says any person, and I'm not as comfortable with it as the owner of the hotel. I mean, is there a better reading?
It should be, wait a minute, because in the keeping of the registry, you would have a person operating a hotel, so, or motel,
Right,
right?
so coming upon that person walking at the desk.
Yeah.
So, right, I mean,
I don't know.
I don't.
That's not new. C is not new.
Well, what we're looking at now, so I don't see the violation going to the person that's renting the room or the person who's working the desk.
Yes, actually, if you read, these are changes, if you go to what's attached, you'll see chapter 137,
Right.
hotels and motels.
Right.
That's our existing ordinance, and if you see under C, prohibitions, actually under B, it says no owner or employee.
Yes.
So either or both could be violated.
Yeah.
Wow, shouldn't it be the owner?
Not
Not
necessarily.
necessarily, because sometimes the owner would not necessarily even know.
Well, that's like at least it.
So, it's like a bartender at a bar. At a bar, the owner doesn't necessarily get busted as, but the bartender can.
Okay, then I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that, how do we make sure the owners are notifying their employees about this?
Not a problem.
No more so-
Isn't that how we're gonna get, I mean, if we want this to take place, the vacuum is where I think it happens a lot of times, so it continues to take place, and then I understand that we can still give them a summons, and they go, oh, I don't know, or the person behind the desk says, my boss didn't tell me all this, but we really should do an education portion of this.
Wait a minute, we're thinking too hard about this. This ordinance is written from other towns.
Mhm.
You're not gonna call Mr. Marriott to come into town and say, you know, you can't give Mr. Marriott a violation.
Well,
There's
yeah,
what
but-
they're doing. Well, we have two podunks.
Well, that's what I'm
right now.
saying,
That's what we have to address. So we have to, the way it's addressed in my eyes is, we advise them right out of the box, they have to keep the registry. That puts them on notice, because day one, they have to have a registry, and that's all part and parcel of what their obligation is.
So, to that point, it would be nice to have our code enforcement officer or one of our police officers go visit with the management, or it doesn't have to be the owner, but the manager there, and say, if you haven't been keeping up on this, because I don't know anybody here from the public that owns one of the two establishments, this is now in effect.
Well, I think as soon as we pass, this is our first reading, right?
First reading.
Well, we just send them a copy?
When we pass it, walk in and hand it. I'll do it.
Okay, done.
Once,
And he didn't mean put a, he meant established business, and within the confines of township, of course.
Thank you.
Podunk is my colloquial.
Correct, I just wanted to make that.
once, and
Want to get the education.
once and if this is adopted, you can bet the day after, our police and or code.
They're
Gonna visit.
anxious.
Yeah.
Correct.
I don't want to beat me there.
But as far as the, on us as a legislative body, it's not our place to educate. It's our place to enact this. No more so than we would go to one of the bars in town and tell the bartenders they can't serve alcohol to underage drinkers. We don't do that.
Right,
It's a
that's the
legislative
point.
Our tow driver's going to tell them to speak.
Yeah, we don't do that.
I think there's enough public education out there, these two establishments, to my point is that, let's just make it.
And usually what happens is when we go in the first time, we'll go in, we'll ask for the registry. I mean, this is just traditionally what would happen. And if they don't have it, then that person is going to be reminded of the ordinance. Then they get the warning the first time, but then if they don't have it the next time, then they're going to be in trouble. And we have a direct responsibility for this because of the hospital, the hotel motel occupancy tax. And we get paid by the rentals. And so if they're not keeping track of the rentals appropriately, then we're losing money for the taxpayer, one. And then two, we also have the regulation here that you can't spend more than 30 days in one room. And what we've seen is that they sometimes don't move people from the rooms, they just do it by paperwork. And now this will make it clear that that's a violation and they have to have the registry. So there's a viable public purpose for the purposes of establishing this and enforcing it. And in the situations that I've seen here in municipal court, it's not necessarily the owner that's the one that's doing it, it's the person at the front desk that's creating the violation.
Thank you.
And our cut on Sunday.
Any other comments from the committee?
Well, I don't want.
Can I get a?
I do have a couple comments.
Oh, sorry.
Because it's distracted by count. Deputy Mayor brings up a point which I don't think is included in the ordinance. I don't want to hold up the ordinance now unless it's considered a minor change, which I doubt my first one is. But we probably ought to include in this ordinance that if anyone in the future pulls either an annual permit or if they have to, or a original CO to open up a hotel that complies with this, that they be given a copy of the ordinance when they register or pay their annual fee, and that would suffice as notice for purposes of the enforcement of the thing. I didn't see a notice provision in here, which would normally be in there.
Well, let's go back to the original, it's the one there. I don't think there is.
No.
But remember, it's first reading, so you can change it any way you want tonight.
So I'd like to see that added as some kind of notice provision in there that comports with whenever they have to register, whether that's annually or when they come up. The other thing that I would like to do is, I mean, it sounds silly, but, and again, I apologize, this goes back to my previous life in another township, but under 137-4A, which talks about every person operating a hotel shall keep therein at all times a standard hotel register. I do wish to add the word bound. It sounds silly, but what happens is these hotels have a shuffle of cards or shuffle of pieces of paper that don't really have any way of, we know what's going on. If the police or code enforcement walk in and there's pages missing out of the book, they'll get a good idea that there's something amiss.
John, with your experience in other towns, is anybody doing this electronically? But boy, wouldn't that make enforcement a little easier? Keep track if there was a file that needed to be emailed.
I don't know, because I've never seen that side of it. I only see it like here. But I'm wondering if we put bound or electronics, and
That's fine.
you know.
Something that's a little more rote than just a piece of paper. Like
On
I
a
would say,
card.
one of the police,
Maybe electronic secure or something.
one of the police concerns was that happened. I will tell you in other towns, it's actually I think in Middletown, they have an incredible enforcement effort there, where the police go on a regular basis into the hotels and check the bound registry for people who want warrants, just to make sure that, you know, the wrong folks aren't around. One other comment.
Electronically better.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
sure there's a,
From getting,
any,
one other thought, and maybe it's not for this time, depending on whether it's for the second reading. Under 137.2, prohibitions of the original ordinance, it talks about 30 successive days or exceeds 30 days in any period of 60 successive days. So you don't have, you know, stay for 28 days, skip 3, and then go for another 30 days, which is appropriate. But there's nowhere in this ordinance that we would have been able to house the folks that helped us out during Sandy, who were here for 60 days and stayed in those hotels. We would have had to kick them out. So we probably need to have some kind of an emergency that the administrator or the officer can declare a state of emergency and allow for it.
that might be in the plan already. That might be the OEM.
Under the prohibitions, something to the effect that said if it's declared emergency by the governor or something like that, that there might be exceptions.
Whatever is the right.
For a governing body.
Well, I don't think you want to go to that level. You probably go emergencies happen, you don't get meetings.
Right.
But I think that's, you need an administrator or code enforcement, or maybe the OEM director. That's fine, I'm fine with that. But there should be something in there that doesn't violate the folks that are helping us out.
It's probably in the plan as well. The OEM.
If you go to 12 hours, are you okay with not having it for less than 12 hours?
At least not for me.
All right. Anybody else?
Sorry.
Or like bound and electronic, yes.
So moved.
With those amendments?
The only one that I'm not
Those
clear on
amendments.
is the notice provisions, and we only have to introduce it by title, we can get the language tomorrow, but I'd just like to get a general idea, that's why I'll be able to put it. I've got the bound or electronically secure, we have unless in the event of a declared emergency.
I don't think that we have I didn't see, and again, Bob, to the motels or hotels that we have in this town have an annual registration under the business mercantile. Okay. Could we put in there that when they annually get their mercantile license, they pick up a copy of the current ordinance or something like that, and that's suffices notice to both them and the employees in the event of a violation? I just don't want them coming in and doing the whole.
Why do we have to be, why do we have to be noticeable?
We don't necessarily, I don't think, but I think that it's an extra step that covers the deputy mayor's concern.
Well, it also helps with compliance.
Would that somehow give them an out? They'd say, well, you didn't know it.
No.
I'm not
For
worried
an
about
law,
that.
it wouldn't work.
At the end of the day,
It takes
we're
away
going to do
the,
the right
it
thing.
takes away the warrant.
There's just no one, us could be the ones that have to remember to do something or give them.
Well, then you put a notice provision in that when they pull an annual mercantile license, it's deemed that they're aware of the statute. I'm fine with that, there's sure to be something in there that references.
Something.
The ordinance gets passed,
Whatever the
it's
senator says.
filed for somewhere, it doesn't make its way to the hotel manager.
Okay, I work on it, I got it.
No, I'm trying to get there, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to belabor. It's been first and second?
Yeah, well, I first.
I didn't hear that.
I second.
All right, I'll take a look.
So these were as amended, so noted.
Yeah. As a
Deputy Mayor Shetzel?
Yes.
Councilman Engel?
Yes.
Councilman Wargo?
Yes.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mayor Magnin?
Yes, public hearing on this will be October 29th, 2014. Ordinance 2014-19, this is an ordinance establishing Chapter 172, property abandonment of the Code of the Township of Colts Neck. This is also first reading by title, something we talked a little bit about last meeting. And this is an ordinance that has been enabled by a recently passed state law that allows municipalities to start to deal with abandoned homes. There's a lot of detail in this statute, but it essentially allows the designated officer, in this particular case would be the township administrator or his designee, to come up with a list of abandoned homes and subsequently allow the township to take certain action to deal with those abandoned homes. Colts Neck, like most other municipalities, has a problem with abandoned homes. They're used for illicit purposes. They are run down. They're public safety hazards. They're nuisances. They're dangers to the police department, to the fire department, EMS. And we just feel at this point in time now that we have a tool to start to be able to deal with them, we'd like to avail ourselves of that. And that's the purpose of this ordinance. Gentlemen, any comments on this one?
Mr. Mayor, just as I mentioned to you last week, I did visit one of those homes with our chief and lieutenant, and just like you had mentioned, I mean, it was trees growing into the house, in the house, it was a danger and a place for illicit behavior. But also, because it was set far back, it was a dumping ground for people's trash, and that was something else that was very bothersome. So you had a lot of trash just sitting out in the open. We talk about aesthetics. I mean, that's something that really is an eyesore for the town. It's going to have an impact on the town in so many negative ways. That the fact that we're discussing this ordinance and doing something about it is a long time coming. So very happy.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the legislature saw what really is a pervasive problem throughout the state and really the country, which are abandoned homes and municipalities having no recourse because the title owner is not involved anymore, and the mortgagee, the lien holder on the property, doesn't care that much. So this statute and the ordinance will give us some power to do some things with this.
Well, really, the code enforcement officer some grip, because he's just battling a battle down there, trying to get a hold of that banks,
This will give us quite a bit of power, I think. And I think because it's so new that nobody has explored the scope of the power, but I've read through this a couple of times now. I think arguably the power would be fairly substantial for the governing body to take action to do something with these homes. And that's what I think we'll be looking at. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think this committee is very interested in aggressively pursuing our remedies for the abandoned homes. I just have one small comment, John.
Yes.
In A1, there's just a period missing at the end of the last sentence.
A1, address, right?
Address period. That's the word.
Mayor, I have a couple questions, and as the second oldest guy on the committee, I remember us going through the same stuff in 1987. I remember going through it when the bottom fell out the last time, 87, 88, from the economy. We went through this whole, there was all the abandoned houses, and there was the same kind of a push for these kind of problems. My concern is twofold. One is whether or not we currently have any tax sale certificate holders who can avail themselves of an accelerated foreclosure action, which may cause some issues in town. The second concern I have is it's not going to really address the trash problems, because whether you took the house, knocked the house down, did whatever, if you have an abandoned lot, stuff gets dumped there. That's what happens. And the third concern I have is I didn't see where the smart guys in Trenton were really able to put in there that if we pass this ordinance, that we would be absolved of any responsibility if we didn't take action. This allows us to take action, and here's my concern. If we have a house, like we do in this town, that's just too darn expensive for us to knock down, if we pass this ordinance, does that create a responsibility or liability for us that might not normally be absolved in Title 59? The ordinance says the ordinance does not address, the state statute does not address it, and our ordinance doesn't address it.
Well, I think it's permissive in nature for you to do the, to do the maintenance on it, isn't it?
I'm asking the question. It gives you a mechanism to do something, and my concern is that very often when the municipality has a mechanism to do
But for
something,
instance,
they
if
don't.
there was a serious environmental concern, we would not take possession of the property, we wouldn't do the,
And that all makes sense. It's just too expensive.
well,
We have the problems where somebody's on the site and they get hurt, and we didn't do anything with that.
The remedies are not mandatory remedies, they're permissive remedies.
I'm asking the question. The problem is the state statute they passed does not, it should have a paragraph that says notwithstanding the provisions of this thing, the liability doesn't incur any additional liability.
well,
The municipality doesn't incur additional liability.
the capability of the legislature deteriorated in the past few years. But other than that, they
Is that what's
just,
code up, by the way?
that's my status, but I'm older, I can say it. I'm not elected. I don't think, seriously, I don't see that as a problem. I mean, I would make the law itself a more protective one, but that would probably be the case. But I don't believe that we are mandated to take any action. It's adding to our tool chest.
I think so, and it's permissive, it's not mandatory.
But can we force the bank or somebody to tear a house down then, or we're just gonna have to go?
Not quite that far, but I think it's something that we'll discuss on how we can play with this a little bit, because I think there is some room to play with.
What's the fines?
It is, but I think there's more you can, at least my reading of it, is maybe a little bit more you can do with this. But the fines, yeah, yes, you could find
And
that.
that's what's been working very well, and some of the Bay Shore towns that have adopted similar type of ordinance already.
Doing daily fines on the lien holder, yeah, that'll get.
And that has definitely, they've made a lot of money on Indian Beach by law.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open for that purpose, I understand the incidental effect, but the idea is to get these nuisance homes.
Correct. But if you find them enough, and they keep paying enough, pretty soon you're gonna have somebody to take them down and take out.
Looking at the factors, I mean, we spent $900 locking these doors up again.
I saw.
Right?
Are we passing it on, or are we?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to pass it on.
Well, you started to do with this
We-
ordinance, again.
What we did with that particular house on a short-term basis was, at the behest of the police department, because it was an emergent situation, where there were frequent and repeated incidents of infiltration into the house, right? People were going into the house repeatedly. So the action we took there was more on an emergent basis. But yes, ultimately, we're going to be looking to recoup that money from either the property owner or the lien holder. So, yes. Yes.
I want to make a comment too. On my trip over there, I did see the trash. I want to comment on what Commitment Gerald said. One of the obvious solutions is to barricade the front entrance. In fact,
So that one or to all of them?
Well, with respect to preventing people from driving up and dumping trash.
We consider.
But let me finish my statement.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do that now. In fact, there is a barricade on that house which is kept open.
This one here,
No,
the one
we're
over
not
the
going to. The reason it's kept open is we don't want to cause, right now, as you know, this whole thing started because of a subculture going on, and we have children on the internet and talking about
Yeah.
chaplains and things like that. So we want to be able to keep it open so our officers can go in and frequently check, and it makes easy access for fire, so it goes on. But if it's a flat piece of property, we can put up a barricade from a car going in. But when it, do you see my point?
Yeah, we talked about it actually, certainly as it relates to this property over here about putting up barriers, but to.
But they drop people off.
To the
You don't bring a car in.
To the point you made, it's a catch-22 because yes, you may restrict the ability of passenger vehicles, unwanted trespassers to access the property, but you're also restricting the ability of the police, the fire department, and EMS to access the property as well. And, you know, unfortunately, when these places go up, they're tin cans, they're going up. And,
Well, my point,
Just
Mr.
really-
Mayor, is if the house no longer exists, just the property, by
Oh,
putting
vacant property.
up,
Oh,
by
yeah.
putting up a barricade, you eliminate the trash.
yeah, yes.
Just like we do at our parks.
You mean, you're talking about assuming the house is demoed and, yeah, oh, yeah.
Correct.
Sure.
That's what.
Yeah, we're done. Okay.
But at our parks, the police have access to the key so that they can get in to respond to an emergency. Somebody falls off a bike, there's something else that happens when they're supposed to be there.
Right.
Problem is, bad things happen when you're not supposed to be there either. And if you can't respond, then you have a big problem.
Any other comments on this one? Take a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Shackle?
Yes.
Mayor Engel?
Yes.
Mayor Wargo? Yes. Mayor Fitzgerald?
I'm going to abstain.
Mayor McNabb?
Yes, public hearing on this also on October 29, 2014. Number 6 this evening, resolution 2014-109. This is approval to submit a grant application to execute a grant contract with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for the fiscal year 2015 NJDOT Municipal Aid Road Program Improvements to Laird Road Phase 2. As many of you know, if you travel down, we had part of Laird Road paved over the last month or so. That would be from Route 537 to Fountains Road. Part of that was done with a grant that we received from the state. We are now looking to apply to the state for another grant for the upcoming fiscal year to finish most of that road, do additional section of Laird Road, and that's what this is. And this just allows us to submit the grant to the state. Any comments, Governor?
The engineer's estimate for this project is $582,000.
Which was about what the estimate was for the other sections.
Just under $5.
So we got about half of it for the last one, and I guess we'd be happy with half of it for this one.
It would indeed.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Shackle?
Yes.
Mayor Engel?
Yes.
Mayor Wargo?
Yes.
Mayor Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mayor McNabb?
Yes. Consent agenda this evening is resolution 2014-110, a resolution approving the insertion of a special item of revenue drunk driving enforcement fund grant, $4,967.87 Resolution 2014-111, a resolution establishing Halloween curfew hours, and a reminder, especially with having the kids here, this is something that we do every year. Curfew for Halloween is 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. on the 29th, 30th, 31st, right? First through the second, first and second. Right. So it's an extended curfew. It's been done every year. People by 9, yeah, it's 17 and under, yeah. So it's pretty much covering everybody. Don't forget that one, please. Resolution 2014-112, a resolution authorizing the recreation program refunds. Resolution 2014-113, a resolution authorizing the release of maintenance guarantee. Planning Board application number 702. This is the Gannett Tennis Court on Eagle Nest Road. Resolution 2014-114, a resolution authorizing the reduction of cash performance guarantees. Planning Board application numbers 701 and 709, Colts and Golf Course. Any comments on those resolutions? Take a motion, please.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Taxel?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Engel?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Margot?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mayor McNamara?
Yes, 8 this evening is a discussion item. It is the 2014 Best Practices Inventory, which we have done since its inception. Bob, if you just want to take us through what this entails.
Every town in New Jersey must file a best practices inventory to the state of New Jersey. What it is a series of 50 questions governing the overall administration of the town. You get to answer yes, no, not applicable, or prospective, if you're planning to do it in the near future. The not applicable or prospective answers count as a yes. You must have 41, the equivalent of 41 yes answers, otherwise the state could withhold a small portion of your state aid. So Mayor, happy to report, in the responsibility to answer these questions fall on your Chief Finance Officer and your Chief Administrative Officer, including Mayor John Economies. The township clerk must certify that this issue was on an agenda and was discussed, therefore it's in front of you now. So the good news is that we have the equivalent of 45 yes. So unless there's questions or anything, a lot of them are repeat questions.
I think this hasn't changed for us in the last.
No.
16 new questions this year.
Was it 15?
16 new information.
At any rate, we do well.
Yes,
And I want to speak very
I said.
And tell the public what we get for having such an outstanding. What we get from the state?
Oh, yeah, the state aid, they threaten us with,
We don't get it.
So we get nothing in the bottom line.
so if we had 0 yeses,
We could still get to say nothing. Yes.
I don't know, unless there's questions, maybe I'll explain.
No. Thanks for putting that together, Bob. Commissioner reports.
No report tonight, thank you.
Vouchers, Mike?
I did do the vouchers. I think the last time I said that it was a new all-time low, actually this month, or this month, all-time low of under $500,000. Total vouchers, $408,064.40. I did go through them all. In terms of highlights, I didn't think there was anything other than I did want to let you know. Nothing unless there's a question.
No more staples for the,
No more staples here for the targets.
Any comments on the voucher?
I saw we had another car accident report that wasn't deer related, was it? For $1,000 to,
not sure of the details of the accident, but certainly could have happened.
It's the,
well, it is, I just want to report to go on my file.
No, we're well aware. Community and Argos asked for police reports on any deer vehicle collisions, so you can use that for supplement.
I don't think that was a small rear end hit of someone hitting a car in traffic, so it didn't involve deer.
Yeah, I know who's talking about.
Yes, it's not, it's $1,000, not $20.
No, the 2,500 was deer related.
Yeah.
It was actually more than that, but that's what our cost was.
That was our voucher. That's correct.
It's $5,000. I'm just thinking, why are we, and we know when there's a clear situation where we have a police and first aid response, for example, to a peer-to-peer collision, the one we've all talked about this last week, of someone who's well-known, very, very significant community leader, to include the cost of that?
Private vehicle?
Well, we burn fuel and go get the poor guy out of the car, take him to the hospital. Police came and responded and put out flares. I mean, there's expenditures that go along that wouldn't have had to have been, I mean, obviously, there's certain things that aren't wrong duty, but there's certain things that are attendant to those kinds of motor vehicle incidents.
But just for deer, why would it not?
Well, it's-
That apply to any animal.
Just for my reports.
That's for,
Yeah, we'll get it.
for the
If you
fiscal.
could ask, if you could ask the Public Works to give me a list every month on how many deer we're picking up right now.
No,
Or
we
is-
get-
Wait. Let me finish vouchers.
Yeah,
There you go.
go.
We finish vouchers. Let's take a vote on the voucher,
So
take a motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Staffel?
Yes, abstain, ToCN.
So noted. Commitment Engel?
Yes.
Commitment Marco?
Yes.
Commitment Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mayor McNabb?
Yes, before I know, we would have got to pay our bills for the month.
Yes, okay.
All right, let's do the reports. Tell us over, let's do the wildlife stuff.
Well, a couple things. Hopefully, we're gonna have a meeting next week. I'm just trying to work out a few things here right now. It's just to get the members back on track and to talk about some of these problems we've been running up with these deer accidents. I'm trying to get more of a handle on it. We're getting more and more complaints about deer stands on township property. I don't know how they made out taking some of them out, but I know the chief reported one. There's a couple over in other places. That's good. Windmill is up. Township Road Department got put up yesterday. So hopefully they'll keep the pond clean.
That will explain to the people, especially the Boy Scouts, who definitely.
This windmill runs and it's got an air pump up top and it pumps hoses down into each pond. And it's bubbling out there to keep hopefully to keep the algae, keep the water cleaner, keep it from freezing during winter, and to help it for the fish that we're putting in there. I asked Eddie to put new fish signs up, no fishing signs, because somebody stole them again. Because the fish aren't this big and they were trying to get them, so they,
So that's good. Just, on the deer, again, for members of the public, I know most of you, especially those of you that are regulars here, just be very vigilant of the deer, especially this time of the year. We've had some significant injury accidents over the last 2 weeks involving deer to township residents. Some non-injury accidents, but the injury accidents were significant accidents. So just be very, very vigilant of the deer. They are very active right now.
And on the major roads,
they're going to get worse from now till December.
Yeah. So just be alert. Members of the press, just if you wouldn't mind reminding your readers to be extra vigilant this time of the year, especially.
When you see one, there's usually a second.
Yeah,
Then
yeah. So just be careful. Anything else?
No, we didn't have planning board, that's next week. We're not even have that anyhow. No, I guess that's it. Mike?
I don't have anything that's necessarily in my committee, but we probably going to spend a minute unless somebody else can talk about it. You can talk about historic preservation, the finding that wood cemetery or not?
You can talk about it.
I don't know much about it, but I just want to make sure that when Frank Reno, who was here that last time, and kind of talked about it, brought it to our attention, maybe somebody could reach back out for him to let him know.
Tommy, you know that man?
Yeah.
Reach out for him, let him know that we found
He
something.
seemed to, he
Yeah,
had a general
I checked it
information.
out with Tim today also, to make sure it was definitely on township property. It's definitely on township property, it had the survey taken on and everything else like that.
Again,
I just wanted to circle
tell
back.
me, this is kind of an interesting thing because we are definitely going to hit up the Boy Scouts to do a project on this. So here's what happened. A man came in last meeting and apprised us of a very old cemetery in town that had fallen into a state of disrepair. Dating back probably to how long time? About
Late, I think it was early 1800s.
so it's a pretty old cemetery.
Laird Ballfield.
Right, it's right behind the Laird ball fields.
And sorry, the Tulsa one was in disrepair on 537 and spoke of what he read about.
Yes, the one
behind
there.
there. So he didn't
Yeah,
have to-
he read an article from 1930 something, right?
Right.
So in any case, the residents' request was to give respect to the people that are buried at this particular cemetery, if we wouldn't mind approaching the Boy Scouts or some other similar type organization about doing a merit project of some sort to restore the cemetery or to clean up the cemetery to make it presentable for those, including some veterans, I believe, who were interred there.
It's a small cemetery.
Yeah, but as many, back in those times, you kind of buried folks, family members in the backyard or in small plots, and we have a couple of them around town, scattered around town.
I can't tell you there's not for a basket, but it starts with big.
So in any case, so at some point when we are able to reconcile, are we certain that it's on township property?
Yes.
Okay.
I checked that with Tim with the deed today, and all they gotta do is go behind the baseball fields and up top there in the woods, and they can get a copy of it from Tim downstairs.
So somebody that may be working on their, one of the merit badges or their, working toward their Eagle Scout, this might be a good project and a nice one to get a little bit of positive publicity for the
Come up
scouts.
with some ideas, fencing it off, or take a look at it.
Yeah. So somebody will take it back here. We'll get somebody to take, if you're interested, we'll get somebody to take it back here and take a look at it.
Senator, one of the tombstones was a Bennett, just trace it back to your family.
Could be. We've been here since 1680.
Never really look at it.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mike? Jared, anything?
Yeah, I had a few meetings. I had Alliance, the Drug Alliance, and I brought to their attention something called iCloud. It's a liquid for use in electronic cigarettes, and there's been several cases of folks ODing. They hadn't heard anything. I don't know how, but I did hear, it made it to the nightly news and a few other news wires, so I brought it to their attention to see if they've heard anything. Just like we heard about heroin years ago, and it really wasn't that prevalent. And we're trying to get out in front of it. But, so Anita's gonna go back to the county and see if she's heard anything on that. We're also keeping an eye on some of the local stores to see if they're stocking it and keeping it out of reach of children. I had architectural review.
Operation Take That last week. The pill thing.
Operation Take Back, yes, very successful. Went very well. Every time they do it, it's extremely successful. Architecture review, just one interesting point, several applications, but what we're hearing from some of the architects that presented is a lot of new construction, new homes tend to be a lot smaller, more energy efficient, more bedrooms, smaller in size, less cathedral ceilings, things of that nature. So I thought that was quite interesting as far as new homes popping up in Colts Neck, averaging around 4,000 square feet. And environmental is canceled.
Jim?
Great. Health Department met just yesterday. We're going through an accreditation process through the state and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. I have no doubt that we will get the accreditation, and besides the kudos to our local health department, it will also allow us eligibility for a number of grants through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Our health officer is also working with our administrator to come up with an updated preventative maintenance program that will be each year. One major project will be done per building. There's a whole schematic here that will eventually be finalized and still being tweaked. And I appreciate the work on from our health officer, and it's things that would apply to health, such as the HVAC systems, cleaning of those, to the septic tanks, to changing charcoal filters and water supplies, and it goes on from there.
We had drainage to that?
It's in there, yes.
And how about
Inspection, drainage, tank, and services required.
chipmunk?
I gotta add that in there, so we'll work on that. They're doing a great job. First Aid Squad continues to do a phenomenal job. I was just out with them earlier today, and impressed every time that I do a 911 call with that group. As the fire department, the police department, all emergency services do a great job. The Historic Preservation Committee for the Scouts, actually we did speak about that, and it's my recommendation for the cemetery project to have it filtered through our administrator and the Historic Preservation Committee. It was interesting at that meeting yesterday as well. Instead of just the one cemetery that we've been talking about tonight, there were probably about 10 that were mentioned. So we have some good historians on there that have been in town for 40, 50, 60 years. So there was a number of them, some that I didn't even know. So it's a nice project that we want to make sure that we document and do justice to these sites. Also, some really exciting things that were talked about. All of us have passed, some of us hundreds and hundreds of times at the mill on Bucks Mill Road, and there's some exciting discussions about looking at that and restoring that. These are things that are going to happen now next spring. That's moving forward. The Montrose Road Schoolhouse has continued to have some maintenance done on that, including a fence that is just weeks away. We're just waiting for the contractor to come and do that. And there's a save the date. Another reason I'm just going to get my phone. That we will have a press release shortly that they would like to. They're considering it's actually December 14th. Yes, from noon to 4. That they're going to do a historic Montrose Road school Christmas. So there's more details to follow on that, but that's going to be an exciting event, I think. That's all I have.
Go, Chair.
Deputy Mayor, question. Answer buyers and all, any conversation?
Yes, actually, some horrible discussions on that, but that's part of our world. So we're very lucky to have the professionalism of Tom Frank, our health officer. So we get statistics actually on a weekly basis of these really tough diseases that are out and about there. One of the things I can tell you from an emergency management point of view and a Department of Health point of view is that while we hear things like West Africa, and then we hear a little closer to home like Texas. I believe that gentleman passed away as early as today. So a little still away from us. But the state of New Jersey, from the state to the counties, down to the local levels, have superior plans to keep track of this. And our local hospitals, obviously, and our disaster committees of local hospitals. So right now in Monmouth County, most of us read about there was a suspicion of Ebola in Central State, and that couldn't have gotten closer to us. But that was not the case. The virus with the children, just again, very sad stories that are happening. But our health officer and your health department speak about this on a weekly basis. And if there's anything that we need to, as a matter of fact, some additional information is added to the website under our health department. So you can look at there, and any statistics we'll keep up on there. If there's anything that's more urgent, we'll make sure we get the communication out appropriately. Yeah. Flu clinics are out and about. Check with your private physician. I would imagine the majority of them will tell you that vaccinations are not a bad thing, but you can look at that on your own. But flu shots are available. Thank you for that reminder. We did the senior citizens flu clinic, and then our town flu clinic is October 14th from 9:30 to 10:30. I think I have that date correct.
Next Tuesday?
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
9:30 to 10:30?
Yes, courthouse.
Yes. It's the 8th.
Just one thing for me. Deputy Mayor and I attended the first annual Colstech PBA run walk for breast cancer, which was a tremendous success. Very nice turnout. This was this past Sunday morning over at Bucks Mill Park. It was a 5K run or a 2-mile walk. Nicely attended, especially for the first year. They tend to do it every year. The PBA did a great job. They all pitched in, put a lot of time and effort into getting it done with help from the junior ROTC from the high school, who also pitched in a tremendous amount of help. A lot of township residents ran. Some folks from out of town, including my wife and my cousin and my daughter. We spent the morning there, be a little bit nippy, but very good event. Keep it on the radar for next year. Even if you're not a runner, definitely come out and support it. It was a relatively nominal expense for a very good cause with people that are very passionate about finding a cure for breast cancer. They actually had one of the renowned researchers from Memorial Sloan Kettering come down from New York to talk to us a little bit, which was really nice. And So just keep that one on the radar for next year.
Principal of our high school,
Yes, it's right. Our high school principal, yes. You beat my cousin by 30 seconds.
Just one thing. The seed company of Seedway this year put on a thing, and they've been working on it, and they got some crossbreeding, and they made pink pumpkins for Breast Awareness Month. And my son raised them, and we donated some for the people over there to the thing. St. Barnabas Hospital's got some. We have these pink pumpkins that are for breast awareness, and every one that we sell, we make a donation back to breast awareness.
Excellent.
Good, that's interesting. All right, anything else, guys? All right, open it up to comments from the public. Who would like to speak this evening? Ma'am?
Diana Pietrowski. I right now on my lap have a book titled New Jersey Graveyards and Gravestone Inscription Locators in Monmouth County. It is a listing of every graveyard there is in Colts Neck, where they are, what the inscriptions say, the history behind the family, everything. It was written by Ed Razor, and my son did a huge contribution with the Colts Neck Cemetery. So if any of the scouts are interested in getting that information, I happen to have it on my lap.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah. Hi, Jeff Sauter, 41 Ann Street, Colts Neck. I just first want to say thank you, or it's good that Troop 290 is coming here. Not that I want to date myself either, but I was actually a member of Troop 290, I'll just say 30 years ago. I won't get any more specific on that, so glad that you're here to see how local government is working. With that, and as the mayor opened up earlier, I'm probably one of those members that's not shy in terms of breaking some points to our elected officials. My first point that I wanted to bring up tonight, Mayor, on September 10th, Jared Angle, Committeeman Angle, asked Mike Fitzgerald, and I guess who's the chair of the, legal committee, to put together a report on legal expenses. And particularly as they relate to GRC. Was that report ever completed?
No. You referred to how much money that what you're doing is costing?
Among other things.
No.
Okay, so that no such report that Committeeman Angle asked for was actually put together.
No,
Okay.
I'll get to that.
Okay, because just let me know, or I'll ask you again, so that way then I can, as Mike pointed out, I'll Oprah that so I can see that myself.
I'll get back to you on how much, I'll decide how much time I have to spend on the time that we're spending, the money we're spending on that.
The other point that I want to bring up is, what's the hourly rate for attorney services for the township? Is there a flat rate?
Flat rate per hour?
For the town.
Yeah, per hour.
No, it varies by the attorney what they're doing.
Okay.
Planning board attorney makes one
So
amount, the township attorney makes one amount.
let me be more specific, for Mr. Ackerman, Chris Ackerman, who sometimes, joins in here, what would be his rate?
The same.
I don't think it's 160.
I think once it's
150 or 160.
But, okay, let's just for argument.
But Mr. Ackerman bills at the same rate as the councilman.
Okay. Is the committee aware, or Mayor, are you aware, or anyone on the committee can speak up for that matter if you want, aware that Chris Ackerman attended a GRC meeting in Trenton on September 30th?
I'm aware.
You are aware?
We're all
Okay.
aware of it.
Okay. So is everyone aware, or just the two of you guys?
We're all aware.
Do you know what the purpose of his trip was?
That's a privileged communication. That's not a concern to me.
Well, the conversation is privileged, but I don't know
Yeah.
the purpose on this is privileged.
Well, the purpose.
I'll tell him.
You go ahead, tell.
We sent him to try to knock out your GRC complaint of your Oprah complaint.
Okay,
Because
so,
we think it's frivolous.
okay, and that's what I thought.
We think you're costing the town unnecessary money.
Okay, so.
That's why we had our attorney go.
All right, very good. And that's what I fully expected and anticipated. Are you aware of the communications that Sharkey, who's the staff attorney for GRC, and he looped in Robert Bowden, the town administrator on that nothing can be gleaned because I had no opportunity to submit any evidence or any additional information concerning my
What's your
complaint.
point?
We have to take that up with them.
Okay.
What's-
Well, the point is that Chris Ackerman went to Trenton, travel time, probably there 3 hours, went through a fire drill, so on and so forth, that billed the town, or will be, I assume, billing the town, 4 or 5 hours.
Just to be
be-
clear, Mr. Sauter, this is solely attributable to what you're doing.
I know.
We don't view it as Mr. Ackerman costing the town money. We view it as you costing the town money.
I fully
I want to
agree.
be really clear about that, because you decided to appear at that meeting. We're not permitted to speak by the by, although I understand that you did.
Yeah.
We were forced to send our attorney to go and represent the township.
Who forced you?
We made a decision because of what you did.
And your town administrator and Mr. Ackerman knew that I couldn't submit anything anyway. So
Then why did you go?
because why don't you ask Mr. Ackerman why I went?
Why did you go?
I went to say, thank you, committee, thank you, Government Records Council, for putting the time into that, and particularly to thank Robert Sharkey, their staff attorney. So there's nothing that you, the town, or Mr. Ackerman would have gleaned from going to that. So that cost the
And of course, we
taxpayer.
have the crystal ball in front of us. We knew exactly what you were
Can I
going to say.
finish, Mayor, please? So,
Listen, you know what? You take a lot of our time up with this Government Records Council business. You have a point to make?
I think I made it that, what Chris went to cost us probably $600, $700, $800.
You cost us that.
No, I
money.
didn't.
Yes, you
guys
did, sir.
Okay. Well, I'll let you have the final word on that, okay? The other thing, too, as it relates to the Government Records Council, just so Tribute 290 can understand, the Government Records Council, that's the GRC, as we've been referring to.
Mr. Sauter, address your comments to me, not to them. You don't speak to them.
Okay. Well, okay, so the Government Records Council oversees, as you may or may not know, Mayor, and for the full committee, when you make OPA requests, which stands for Open Public Records Act, that you're allowed to request for public records. And when there may be allegations, we'll just leave it like that those access to those public records were denied. Members of the public are allowed to file a complaint with the Government Records Council. That goes through a process to resolve that complaint with your local officials. So that's really all I want to say. So thank you.
Mayor, I just so the public knows, since the Boy Scouts are here, the advent of the OPA request and Government Records Council, it all sounds nice and it sounds like a wonderful civic lesson, but Mr. Sauter was voted out of the fire department, and then he sued the fire department, he sued the township, and the township is being cost money as a result of that lawsuit. The OPA request and the Government Records Council request that Mr. Sauter made are with reference to records involved with the fire company. That's the advent and the background of the.
That is public and Committeeman Fitzgerald. That is part of it. There's more. There's more to the backstory to it in terms of the public records that were requested. Were unrelated, completely unrelated to the litigation. Though it's nice that you want to try to tie it in, and that's your opinion, and that's fine. We're all entitled to opinions. The government records that were requested relate to LOSAP, which is a Length of Service Award Program, which is a very good program that is funded by taxpayers. And it was related to documents or the numbers that are being reported that the taxpayers have to pay weren't being reported, let's say not correctly. There was a multiple set of numbers that were being produced, and each time that I made a request or an inquiry, the numbers would change. That ultimately was unfortunate to the taxpayers of Colts Neck. So that's what the Government Records Council request was. It's not related as much as Mike Fitzgerald wants to tie it into the litigation. Again, that's his opinion that he wants to do that to try to discredit me like he's attempted before. So, but thank you very much, Committee. I appreciate your time.
Anybody else tonight? Yes.
Michael Viola, 28 Provincial Place, Union. In reference to 2014-19, how many properties in town is it estimated have been abandoned or in disrepair?
We had a partial list from our police department. There's approximately 6 properties on it.
And are they regularly on the patrol route? route, so the police continue to pass by there.
Yes.
And the code enforcement is a part-time job, is that correct?
Right.
So will the increase in their role as far as code enforcement increase to the point of that possibly being a full-time job?
The role of the code enforcement will not increase. The role will remain the same. The action to be taken under the new ordinance and the statute is really municipal action. It's actually to take a lot of government.
Yeah, I think, Michael, one of the difficulties is this ordinance isn't really where the zoning officer is going to go out and issue, 15 more violations for a broken window or a door that's broken or something like that. It's more intended to try to correct the generic, bigger problem.
Sure. And there's likely to be additional legal costs to the township, is there not?
Well, that's certainly not a bad thing.
No. But I just encourage you, if you have to bite the bullet there, you'll have a lot of support from the township because as Committeeman Chatzel said, that it's not only functionality, it's aesthetics. It's a beautiful town as long as we keep it beautiful.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, the good news is we finally have a tool to start to work toward dealing with that problem. And I think this statute passed in August is really great too.
And it focuses a lot on the ability for the town, if a Bank of America is out of state, that's the headquarters, they have to designate someone local that we have the right to be able to communicate with and give them these notices. And their failure to then comply with the cleanups allows us to give the notice to that person that they must tell us who it is and assess fines against them. And the purpose is not to assess and gather the money, the purpose is to get the building secure and clean. That's the purpose. But sometimes you have to do it by levying the money against the people. This will require, in some cases we're dealing with representatives in California for a bank. This will require them to designate an in-state person for us to be able to meet with. Amongst other things.
There's a cost to enforce, and I just encourage you to go forward, go through with your plan, and absorb the cost to enforce to keep the town safe and free.
And if you see any houses around town that you have a concern about, feel free to call.
Thank you.
Virginia?
In regard to the cemeteries, Homedale suffered a loss in that the cemetery was within the Grand, I think it was, and the board just hired someone and they plowed down all the stones, all the ancient stones. In North Carolina, individual burying sites are protected by state law. And I think it might be incumbent on this committee to write a letter to the legislature, Senator Beck or Mrs. Casabran, to protect individual graves or several graves where they appear. I think it would be a useful part of the Scouts' activities.
Thank you, Mrs. Amon. We actually, at the Historic Preservation Committee meeting, spoke of the Homedale situation. That was a homeowners association, and they went in, so one of the parts that I want to coordinate it through the administrator and just to have these rules and regulations is that in no way do we intend to touch in any way any of the gravestones.
But that's not my point. My point is to protect individual graves or graves.
Yes.
Wherever they appear in New Jersey. And
we're in full agreement with that. That's an excellent, especially the boundaries of the township.
This body might send a letter in support.
By any chance, did you, I know you referenced the statute out of North Carolina, did you have it or do you what?
Well, you want me to produce the
I can do the homework, but if you had it already, I would have. Okay.
In the South, farms usually have burying ground, family burying ground.
Right. No, but I would, just as an idea to suggest to the legislatures.
I'll research.
I can do it. I mean, it's not that big. All right, anybody else tonight? Gentleman right here.
Just wondering if.
Just, you guys state your name and your address.
Gail Sass, live on 128 County Road, in Colesnick. I was just wondering if there was a bridge or something I could use to find the graveyard that you said needed restoration.
You have the one on Rare Road?
Yeah, if you go downstairs, after the meeting, I'll give you a phone number, you can call Tim and he can give you the location, Hank. It's right behind the Laird baseball fields.
We'll help you find it. That's what you guys want to do.
We'll get somebody to show you.
Yes, ma'am, doctor, station name and address, please.
Diane Rinaldi, 17 Big Beach, Colson. I have a question, not knowing, with the school possibly closing, do you have anything to do with that?
No.
Or is it just the Board of Ed that can
We're just
decide?
aware of that.
Even though it's a big effect on our town?
The way government in New Jersey works is it's created two different governing bodies. The governing bodies of the municipality, whether it be the committee form like we have or a council form like other municipalities have, is totally separate and distinct from school boards. You elect both of them. When you go to vote in November, you elect members of the Board of Education, you elect members of the township governing body. We govern the town, they govern the schools. And we're not legally, although I may have communication with the school board, we have absolutely no say in what they do, no more so than they have any say in what we do.
Thank you.
With that, there are liaisons
Yes.
between the township committee and the school board.
It will happen to be the
Which
I mean, how it's going to affect our town,
And there is
property, everything.
Yeah, we're
ongoing communication about that, and I'll be happy to speak with you after the meeting as well.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else tonight? Chuck?
This is not a trick question. Does anybody know when Troop 90, the Land Township Boy Scouts, I was a member of, Tommy, you remember that? What was it changed to 290? You know it?
It was 90 down here, and then they moved number 2 up, they started running number 2 firehouse in 1970 something, and that became 290, and I guess they just enlarged. They all merged, because when Walt Voorhees and Bud couldn't do it anymore, nobody wanted to step up, so they moved everybody up to 299. I mean, I hate to say it, but I was there in 60 something, 1860.
I did, in reference to the article you mentioned, 1933, June, I asked Johnny Richards, and Johnny wasn't born, he was born in 38, but it was his father.
40s.
No, that's Johnny Penn, so that's Johnny Richards.
Oh.
Okay? And Johnny Richards' father was a scout master. So I asked him to find out what he knew about that.
Because it was 90 back when we
Yeah, it was always 90, always 90.
I think that's a great tree project in itself.
Family tree.
History of 290.
Anybody else tonight? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Rwanda, 16 Exeter Pass, Postneck. I was told that Ms. Carter, you told me that you'll be talking about the energy aggregation project.
Energy.
I was last
Am I wrong?
2 weeks ago.
I don't remember in detail what we talked about, but
Okay.
obviously, if I said that, I was wrong. I apologize. That was a couple of meetings ago.
Do you have a question on energy now?
Yeah. What is the, I believe it's the Con Edison? Are we going with them for energy aggregation at a particular fixed rate for the whole year, starting 2015, January?
March of 2015.
2015.
So yes, we did go with Con, I think it's actually Con Ed.
It's not Con Ed.
Associates or something. They're the energy producer for Con Ed. And that was the lowest of the bids.
And how does one participate in that?
Did you get a regular JCP&L bill now?
Yes.
Then you don't need to do anything.
As long as you're not already using a third-party energy supplier, you're automatically, unless you opt out, you're automatically.
There'll be some mailers that are going to go out shortly about that.
Gentlemen, I know so one of you had your hand up. Yes, sir. Yeah?
Holding Rider, 83 Mountain Road, Postneck. If we're going to do the service project, is there a certain time we have to do it, or?
No. Nope, not at all. We appreciate, and I think the people that are incurred there will appreciate that, the efforts that you put in whenever you get to do it.
You probably have to take time to figure out how you're going to do it, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
do it.
I think it's one of those projects that's going to take some planning.
Well, who would be either, who's the liaison? Maybe, I know we can get in touch with Bob and if you need to.
Yeah, no, actually, we'll be, there is a service project coordinator, and I can be the coordinator, and we'll have to do that. I won't ask them to go individually, we have to go through the troop.
Whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Good project. Anybody else? Young lady right over here? I keep.
So what was your question?
What was the question?
What's the name of the school
this?
We have no idea.
We have some idea too, sure. The Board of Education meetings, there was one that took place earlier, and there's another, the next one is October 15th, 7 p.m. at the primary school. So it's still being studied and looked at. The discussion at this point from the Board of Education meeting is Concord Road Elementary School. So if that happens, and again, it's just discussions, there'd be a plan to go ahead and move the students, some to the primary and some to Cedar Drive. But that's not, that is an ongoing discussion.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I was wondering if there was any other things you'd like us to point out?
Any projects?
You should see right along. Everyone's
Yeah, I think we'll have your coordinator contact township administrator, and we always have projects that could be done.
Especially in spring.
Yeah, especially in the spring. But we always have projects that can be done. We'll have your coordinator talk to the township administrator about some different projects that you may undertake. The cemetery just happened to come up 2 weeks ago. It sounds like a really worthwhile project. That's why we brought that one up tonight. But there's a garden behind the library that always needs care, and
There are some February 11th memorials. I'm always looking for projects to adopt that at a month at a time during the, not the winter time, so they can kind of just weed it and keep it clean and all of that. We have our memorial park on Hires Mill, so there's definitely, please coordinate through the administrator here, and we'll keep you busy.
yeah, there's always stuff that can be done. It's just a question of, for you guys, I mean, you guys are very busy. You got school, you got sports, you got scouts. Just finding the time to do some of these things could be a pretty big undertaking. So, you know, we'll work with your coordinator. We'll find some things for you guys to do. There's always something to do. And we appreciate the volunteers. Volunteers are the backbone of the community. We really need people to step up. I started when I was 14 volunteering in my town where I grew up, Marlboro next door. So it's definitely never too soon to start stepping up and volunteering, so we appreciate it. Because otherwise the town doesn't grind to a halt and nothing will ever get done. Appreciate it. Judy?
Judy Walker, Greenville Village. The other person that they can get in touch with is Tom Kennedy with the Recreation Department. He always has projects.
Yeah, I think we'll run it all through Bob, and we'll have Tom in, and he could give us some ideas as well. That's not a bad idea. Anybody else this evening? All right, seeing no further comments from the public, I'm going to close the public comment section of the meeting. We're going to go into closed session tonight. We do not expect to come back into public session. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Carried.
Thank you all for coming out tonight.